Hey there, everybody. I've got a NEC PC CRT here, and I've been honestly just waiting for about the last 10 minutes because this one just showed up to be serviced. The owner of it told me that he'd press the power button and eventually the screen would pop up. I wasn't really sure, so I had it plugged in here, and sure enough, about 10 minutes after it just sat here, I noticed this screen finally just popped up and it says the refresh rate is lower than recommended. So I'm not sure what the refresh rate is coming out of here, but you know, it's probably just 480p. So we'll get out of that. And it's very dark in person, which I'm not too worried about. Let's go over here. We will pick out the 240p test suite software and we'll load that up and see how this CRT looks. It looks pretty good, but it's obviously got an issue at the startup. Now, normally that would be due to capacitors kind of running out. Let's see what happens. I gotta press play there. Okay, again, yes, we know. Okay, there's our 480 input, super bright mode. Okay. There we go. So now I've got the 240p test suite pumped in here. Man, this looks really great. I can understand why you'd want to save this monitor. It is, again, the super bright Diamondtron Multisync Multisync FP2141SB from NEC. We've got some buttons on the front here. Oh, on the back side here is the label. Looks like July 2022. And NEC Multisync FP2141SBBK. It runs on 120 to 240, right? 100 actually to 240. So it is a multi-regional monitor, 50-60 hertz, 1.5 amps, energy efficient for home use, and Mitsubishi systems from Tokyo. Now this would have been a Diamondtron, obviously it says, so it's based off probably the Trinitron architecture for the tube, and this would have been made after the patent had run out. And so we're just gonna go over here, we'll check out a test pattern. I do see like a band kind of up in this area, and I'm not sure what's causing that banding. Could be the wire behind the image. So we do have some things going on here in the image. Let me turn the lights down. So not only are we going to attempt to service this set on the power supply side, we'll probably check out the deflection capacitors. If we take a look, let's see, we can take that down a little bit. The overall look of the screen is okay, but we definitely have kind of a, it looks to me like a screen bowing issue overall, where it's kind of bowing out. See how it's bowing out there? And then over here it looks like it's bowing in a little bit. So that should be adjustable. And if we get her closer in here, we can see some convergence issues where our blue is separated heavily out in some of these points. It shouldn't be this bad. Like, it shouldn't be reaching all the way to this inner circle or inner square, which it kind of already is. So hopefully we can clear that up too. It's much better down in this area. It's really up in this area is off. Also, you can see separation of the blue line on this edge, and then it comes together and then separates again. All right, the CRT's scrolling here. It's been running good. The colors are nice and vibrant. And what I wanted to test here was one final thing from the instructions on the from the owner. Now, he said that if you let it run for a minute, you can power it off and the screen should come on relatively quickly. So let's power it off. And it's not been running that long. If I look at my clock, it's probably been about 15 to 20 minutes total. Let's see if it comes back right back up. He said it would do that. He said once it warms up that it'll pop back on like that pretty quickly, and there you go. Okay, get that out of the way. Now I think we need to get inside and check out the hardware internally. All right, check it out. I've got it somewhat disassembled. First thing, the bezel just slipped out. I just put a little screwdriver behind it and it just literally popped out. So that came all out. And then when it was gone, I noticed these 3 push tabs here, and that's how you get it. You get these push tabs to come down and it will release the shell top and back, and that just comes right off. Now I did not do it that either. That was how it was when it came. But I thought I'd show you what it looks like with just the flat tube here. There is no like protective glass layer or anything. It's all straight glass. There's no anti-glare layer on here or anything like that. It's all just glass tube. So we can clean it and not worry about damaging anything. But what we're going to do is I'm going to start to get in here, and it looks like somebody just pulled this flat back to check inside. I'm not sure what happened there, but we'll remove some of this shielding, check out the boards, and look at things. There is a lot of shielding on here. I believe this, though, is going to be either a power board maybe, and then like the deflection stuff will be maybe in the bottom, some in the side. We'll see. All right, I've got the power supply sitting out here. I'm about to take it out fully. I just wanted to show you there are connection points on it that are disconnectable, so we can get this whole isolated power supply out safely and service it. Then pop it right back in here. Check out this neck board configuration. Now down here is the input board, so you have the input board or video board over here, and then this is our tiny neck board, and then I think a lot of this information is going to be going over to that neck board if I can see. Yep. So that's where a lot of that is going. If we look down in there, that's definitely going to be the deflection zone. If we look up here, these potentiometers probably can help us with our stuff on our convergence, but what I'm worried about now is this thing. Look at that. That looks like somebody was in here turning it and broke it, because it should look like this. That might be one of the reasons we're having so much trouble getting good convergence, but everything else over here looks pretty good. And we will start by servicing this, and then we can really tell if that's going to help out, because if we service this and run a power cycle and it powers right on the first time, then we know we've kind of fixed that issue. All right, I'm in here looking at this power supply. I've removed the heat shielding, and I will tell you something. You can see signs that people have been in here before. This shielding should be flat. Somebody tried to rip it, didn't really know what they were doing, and bent it all to Sam Hill, Houston. And I'm looking in here, and I'm definitely noticing interesting stuff. First off, if we look over here, we know like these capacitors have not been changed. These are nice. This is a Rubicon. This right here is a Rubicon. These are also not, these are not Rubicons, but they are good, both of these. And then over here, Jamicon. I mean, that's pretty something you would see in this stuff from this time period, Jamicons. But what else am I looking for? I'm looking for really off stuff. It looks like a Jamicon, but Rubicon. But check this out. This little sucker right here, this is definitely not standard and not how it would have been installed. This ugly thing. Oh, this, and this might be the whole problem right here, just this one capacitor. This is a Chong X. See that? And those are notorious for being garbage. But that does not look like one that came from the factory. Let's remove the board and see if there's any evidence on the other side that someone soldered that, because I can't tell. All right, check it out. I've found some evidence here. Look at this one. No wonder this thing was taking a long time to turn on. Look at that leg of that capacitor. My guess is that maybe the stuff would heat up enough and make a good weld right there, but C971 was replaced, and my goodness, it's such bad solder. Look at that. You see this? Hang on, let me get a good focus. You see the pin head just moving around, and it's dirty. What else did they do? Looks like they messed with this one, C595. But that one's a Rubicon. So we're definitely going to replace that one and probably the other smaller capacitors in here. I'll test this big one. And what's the values on some of these? If they're a pretty common value, I'm going to go ahead and replace them. 250 volt 100. We'll probably check the value on that. Ooh, this is a weird value. 182 microfarads. Hopefully that one's not bad. I mean, these capacitors don't look bad. I'm going to be guessing that the main problem was that one. I'll change this. What do we got over here? I'll change this one. I'll change these smaller ones to some new Rubicons and Nishikons, and then we'll get rid of all these smaller Jamicons in here. And then I'll go through and I'll spot flow fresh solder on most of this board, especially all the connection points that you see over here where wires connect to the power supply, and then anything else that looks dodgy. A lot of this still looks good, but there's some spots like, see, check out up here. See, I need to reflow solder up on this chip, and there's a lot of spots where randomly somebody's like messed with the solder, so I'll just fix all that. Come down here and do this transformer too. Okay, I have serviced this power supply and buttoned it all back up. You can see I put all fresh capacitors in there, Rubicons mostly, some Nishikons, and got it all cleaned up. Everything looks good now. I didn't notice anything off on it, so hopefully it'll be fine. I did QC everything, so it's ready to go in and test. Let me show you something else I found inside the CRT. Alright, I'll get the power supply in there, but before I do that, I wanted to show you one other little thing I found. There's a little board over here, and it has those cables right there, the red and the blue coming in on this side. I noticed how it was a little bit crooked, and also this resistor was actually bent and pushed up against the circuit board, so I moved it, and I noticed that it's not easy to see, but look right here. If I wiggle the wires on that connection, you could see where there was a cold solder joint. It's pretty much broken clean there. So we're going to reflow the solder on just that point right there and get that cleaned up before I actually test this. Alright, here's the pieced together CRT, and everything has been put back in its place, and I've checked it all out. And the only thing I did find was a ground cable right here had disconnected itself. Now it's looped around and connected to the grounds everywhere else, so hopefully, I mean, that shouldn't make any difference to prevent it from starting. I'll fix that in a minute, but that was something else I noticed. So let's just turn it on and see if it starts right up. This is the first time I've turned it on since servicing it. So I'm going to hit this, and then we're going to turn on this just to make sure we have power. Yep, that's all good. Alright, now let's see what happens when I press the power button here on this CRT. That's not the power button. It's making the noises. And look at that! Hey, the screen popped right on. Still got all those deflection issues, but we have like perfectly fine screen up here. That is working now. Right, it turns right on. So we definitely found our issue with the slow power up. And it could have been, I mean, a bunch of those capacitors were reading bad. It also could have been the fact that there were plenty of cold solder joints on those two power boards. But now we got it powering back up immediately. I'm going to let it run for a little bit, and then we'll come back and look at what else we want to do to it. Alright, I've been letting it run here for a while. Everything looks good. I even noticed some of that banding that we saw in the screen, like where it was shadowed up top, has pretty much been wiped away too. So I'm sure surely a lot of that stuff was due to power supply capacitors just being out of spec and old. But it's looking pretty good. There is one drawback, and I was looking at some of the convergence controls, and they've definitely been messed with. There's supposed to be like some tabs on that silver ring right there, and they've been clean broken off. It's also not set to where it was originally. I'm going to try to reset that ring, especially the one where you see no yellow at all, to its original spot, if I could find the original spot on it. But somebody definitely went in here and messed with the convergence rings. And then if we look over here, they got a little bit too aggressive on these potentiometers, which is kind of a bad thing, because you've got that one, and the one right next to it's got the lid popped right off it. And those are all convergence controls and meant to help you clear up your convergence. So with that being unadjustable, kind of, it's not really good. Also, it's not easy at all to service that board. Sure, you can disconnect it from a couple places, but it's actually all those points that you see on the top where it gives you little like nodes. It's P6, P7, all that stuff is soldered into the board. So you got to desolder all that stuff from the yoke. You pretty much have to remove the yoke, desolder all that to get the board off. So that's probably something we're not going to be able to do on this one. Alright, I've spoken with the owner of this CRT, and he just wanted to keep this repaired, so we're not going to go any further with restoring the deflection board, but if you wanted to go further, you could restore that deflection board and also adjust your deflection, and you could service even the neck board and the input board also. I did attach that ground cable back to the neck board. Right now I'm just letting it run on the demonstration. I will tell you that what you hear right now is the fan noise from my stock Sega Dreamcast. There's no noise from this PC CRT monitor, so it's upscaling, or it's running, sorry, at 31 kilohertz, which is actually outside of our ears' ability to hear that. So these are super quiet. So if you want a CRT that is super quiet and is not going to have, if you hear that 15 kilohertz analog whine, then these PC CRTs are really an awesome thing to use, because again, they're running outside of that and you can't hear them. So the last thing I'm going to do is slip this bezel back into place, and it just kind of slips in there, and this NEC is good to go. Before I leave, I'll show you a little footage of this NEC with some Dreamcast. We'll look at some homebrew titles, and let's see what I pick out. How about we get in here and try out something I've never shown before. This shmup, Pink Bullets, Last Hope. Alright, so we're going to check out some 480p here in a second. I'm just going to let this independent title Last Hope run. And look, this is a perfect monitor for you guys if you're looking for something, again, that's 480p, super quiet, and analog video. It's really great. You're not gonna see as thick of scan lines usually, but you will see scan lines. You can see it right there. See the scan line in between the frames. So it's not it's a 480p line count instead of a 240p line count. So you're definitely The scan line isn't going to be as thick, but it will be there. Super high resolution on these old CRTs. They can go and do a lot more things if you have devices that can connect into them. Let's see if we can get some gameplay here. It's going to probably say demonstration mode, but I really just wanted to show off the color depth. The blacks on a CRT like this look awesome. It's got a super fine pitch on the, I guess it's an aperture grill, because if it's a Diamondtron, it's a Sony. So the pitch just means the size of the holes in the grill are super tiny, and the tinier they are, the more direct, or the more control you have over the beams, and you can fire them in a much more accurate manner if you get the setup right, and thus just give you a sharper image, better picture reproduction on the screen. Just kind of nerding out here for a minute. But that's it. I mean, this is a great CRT. I don't know how many times I can say it. I have a Sony that is similar to this one. I've shown it in the past. If you want to check out that video, I'll link it up here in the corner. But yeah, that's our NEC Multisync, beautiful 20-inch PC CRT. Alright, thanks for joining me today on this one. I want to note some special things here. First off, I did measure the quality of every one of those capacitors on the power supply board, and I did replace a vast majority of them. Lots of them were reading between 60 to 70% on the tolerance, or right outside of spec, because you're within 20% tolerance limits on those capacitors. So many of them were reading out of spec. And I really think that the bigger problem here was a combination of that, and then the cold solder joint we found on that secondary board. That secondary board was a power board also, and it did have capacitors on it that were also out of spec. So I went ahead and recapped that little board. So those two boards ultimately being serviced did fix this. We also did get rid of that color banding, shadowing at the top and the bottom of the screen I showed at the beginning of the video. That was eliminated with the capacitors. So I'm guessing that the power regulation was not so good with those out of spec capacitors. Once it warmed up, and those cold solder joints probably fused a little bit, at least enough to get the monitor to power on. So other things, well, this one was serviced at some point by somebody, and they didn't do a very good job. I don't know. I'm not trying to like knock people, but if you are going to work on something like this, you need to be careful. You need to make sure you're using the right kind of parts. We don't want to put inferior parts inside of here. You also got to make sure you know how to solder and use the correct blend of solder or type of solder. Anyway, if you need more help with things like this, if you want to get your CRT serviced professionally correctly, you can jump on the Patreon. There's a link to that in the description of this video. And also, you can get direct messages through to me on Patreon, and I can help if this is something you're actually trying to do, is work on your own CRT. Because if you do have the tools and the capability, there's no reason that you couldn't get into something like this properly and service it. But if you just kind of swing and jump into it, you can see where all like the shielding was ripped off and stuff. That's not so great. Anyway, this has been like part of a kickback to videos that are really more technical, just showing off repairs. I do have some stuff coming in the future that's going to be different. You know, we're going to be, I'm working on something right now, a special thing to go back and visit. We're going to look at some, revisit some things like free CRTs, a bunch of those things. I found so many free CRTs in 2025 on the streets. I mean, in my neighborhood and other neighborhoods around the area. I also got some yard sale CRTs. I think we'll go into the vault and check those things out, and maybe visit some old friends of the channel in the next episode. And finally, after all this extra stuff, I want to remind everybody that I will be at Retro World Expo at the end of the summer. I think it's in September this year. And if you want to check out more information on that, I will put a link to the convention in the description of this video. Also, just Google Retro World Expo, and it's going to be in Hartford, Connecticut. And we always have a great time at that convention. It's really the only one I plan to go to annually for a while. I may go back to the one in Nashville if I can line that up, but I for sure am trying to keep going to the Retro World Expo as long as they'll have me. I will have a special class there. It will be different than last year's presentation, and it'll be a lot of fun. So I want to tell you, you're invited. All you got to do is come and pay your admission to the convention on that Saturday, and you'll get to come to an hour-long CRT session with me. I'll have all my friends there. I'll have the PVMs, I'll have the CRTs, I'll have the TVs, I'll have the BVMs, I'll have the tools, I'll have Bob from Retro RGB running around. You know you want to be there. Thanks again, everybody. I'll see you next time with some more retro content.